So as debate continues in South Africa and indeed the world, specifically now at the COP27 summit underway in Egypt, which you've just seen, the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection, or MISTRA, is itself publishing material on a just transition to a low-carbon future in South Africa. It's released a paper titled The Energy and Water Nexus, a case for an integrated approach for the green economy in South Africa, which explores the relationship between energy and water. It notes that often in policy debates, the connection between water and energy is not well articulated, adding, though, evidence suggests a strong codependence between electricity production and coal and water, and how a shortage of water will affect electricity availability. To speak further about this and how we can better understand the negotiations South Africa is participating in at COP27, we're joined by Dr. Nqobile Xaba. She is a researcher at the Knowledge Economy and Scientific Advancement Faculty and co-editor of MISTRA's publication on this, so just transition to a low-carbon future in South Africa. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So let's just start with this. The recent publication is drawn from MISTRA's publication, Earth, Wind and Fire, unpacking the political, economic and security implications of discourse on the green economy in 2016. But how has the conversation developed since then?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. Since that publication, I think a lot of policy development has occurred in the country as we are moving towards transitioning to a low-carbon economy. And that is evidenced by a couple of policies that have been implemented and approved by Cabinet lately, including the just transition, the framework for a just transition in South Africa, the climate change bill that is being tabled. And last Friday, the president launched the Just Energy Partnership Investment Plan that is being tabled at COP27 this week. So indeed, South Africa is transitioning, and the transition in the country is underway to a low-carbon economy. Hence, we have a cohort of representatives at COP27 this year.
And just talk us through what they're explaining. From your perspective, the two books propose a mix of policy instruments in South Africa which could promote the development of a low-carbon economy. But how do they guide an approach that is people-centered and acknowledges the complexities and inequalities of South Africans?
The low-carbon economy, or the transition to a low-carbon economy in South Africa and Africa, is quite complex, as you've quite mentioned, because we are grappling with socio-economic challenges like the high unemployment rate and poverty, and therefore the transition is not simple. So there should be a justice element that is embedded to it, which ensures that the vulnerable communities as well as workers are taken care of during the transition. And so we require policies that are catering to that need and that are suitable for the country's transition.
And we'll pick on some of those in just a moment, but I want to talk about what is mentioned in the introduction, as I said, the Energy and Water Nexus. So in all of this, what role does water management, including water demand management and conservation, water reclamation, purification and recycling play? Take us through this nexus that you explain.
So I think we've seen over the past few months that South Africa has also started implementing water cuts on top of the power cuts that we've been having. And that speaks to the synergies and the codependence of electricity and water, because the production of water and pumping of water through municipalities and getting water into households requires electricity. And vice versa, the production of electricity requires water. And so these two are very codependent, and therefore it is important that policies that are being implemented for electricity are also catering for water shortages and water usages to ensure that we have enough water to supply citizens and to ensure that during power cuts we don't experience water shortages and vice versa. So there's that synergies that seems to be lacking in policies that are currently in the country, because energy planning needs to to cater for water, and as well as water planning needs to also extend to electricity planning. These are going hand in hand and they cannot be isolated. And at the moment in South Africa, it seems like we are not going through the right path.
I mean, I was just looking at the irony of some of the visuals that we're looking at there. We're talking about droughts, for instance, so that almost means like an excess of water. I mean, rather flooding, an excess of water, but there's still extreme drought, and there's lack of energy because of lack of water. So some of these contradictions. But I want to reflect on, you speak about the importance of nuclear energy and our capacity, because you say, for instance, Eskom's modelling of future water requirements for most likely power generation scenarios in this country show that water requirements in 2030 would increase by 23 millimeters per annum, with coal replacing the planned nuclear capacity and FGD being installed on only new coal capacity. But what does this all mean? Nuclear power plants, do they remove large quantities of water themselves?
I think with nuclear energy, for the production of nuclear energy, you require a lot of water, but with that, you are looking at probably using desalination technologies that is able to remove salt from seawater, and therefore, in that process, you can actually end up having a surplus of, of fresh water that can be available, that can be rerouted towards, usage by citizens and people.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Would have loved to carry on, because the paper also, of course, talks about the relationship between water and energy and the Millennium Development Goals, and it also talks about the conflicts over the resource. Just some of the solutions that are proffered as well include green economic services and industry, in corporate efficiency gains in the quantity and quality of production, and providing decent work. So that there is Dr. Nqobile Xaba, researcher and co-editor of this publication by MISTRA, the Mapungubwe Institute of Strategic Research. It's titled Just Transition to a Low Carbon Future in South Africa.